So I'm Maria Merloni, and I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a therapist for about 25 years now. I'm also a certified life coach specializing in sex and relationships for about close to 20 years. And I am a tantric healer. I come by my abilities through, I say, I didn't go to school for that. I learned everything I know from goddess. And so I have a history of many past lives as a tantric healer, and began to realize that over the last 10 years or so. And the longer that I practice, the more that I allow to come through, because it was very scary for me in the beginning to acknowledge that. Yes, and I do work with individuals and couples. I hold workshops. I am going to talk about a couple of things briefly. I'm going to talk about how would someone know if they were what I call a hell yes or a hell no to something. And in addition to that, I'm going to talk about, what happens if you happen to be somebody, or in the moment, it can happen to any of us, you don't know, or we might call that you're a maybe. So first, just to talk a little bit about a hell yes. I think it's something that we can all understand through our own experiences, not with consent, in the bedroom necessarily, or out of the bedroom. But if we talk about our experiences with food, right? Like I could say, I'm a hell yes to ice cream. I really am. When I think about ice cream, my whole body lights up, kind of like from here, from my heart center outward. And I could also say, I'm a hell no to anchovies. Or any kind of, like fish sauce. Fish sauce is not for me. So when I think about that, I have more of a contracted feeling in my chest, like a yuck, right? So that experience, really simply, of a hell yes and a hell no is very much the same when it comes to consent. So just a really basic way to think about it is, thinking about food and experience that we can all relate to, foods that we like, foods that we don't like. I wanted to give that analogy. And then let's talk a little bit about what to do if you're not sure whether you're a yes or no to something, or if you actually feel like a maybe, right? I've attended a lot of cuddle parties because my primary partner is a cuddle party facilitator. And so I've actually assisted him in many, many cuddle parties. And in cuddle party, we say a maybe is a no. Right? It seems like it's actually a great guideline for cuddle parties. However, when it comes to consent, we may find ourselves in a situation where we're a maybe and we realize that we are a yes, or what I like to call a yes in service to someone else's requests. So let me explain a little bit more what I mean by that. So let's say someone asks me to rub their shoulders, and I'm not necessarily bubbling over with joy about the idea of rubbing their shoulders. However, when I check in with my body, then what I would recommend is giving yourself time to do that. That's one of the really important things to know about being unsure of your own answer, which is to take your time. Right? So that's an important boundary right there, is to say, I'm not sure, let me check in with myself. And if I were to, my way of doing it often is to just simply imagine myself doing the thing that's been proposed. So I might just take a moment, imagine myself rubbing this person's shoulders. And if it doesn't feel like the hell no, like that feeling that I had when I was talking about fish sauce, right? Then perhaps it could be a yes in service to that person's request. So that's one way to be able to tell. Another thing that's important, another nuance of this that's really important, is that those of us who've been, who have grown up with any kind of abuse, victims of any type of abuse, do have a tendency to be what we call people pleasers, right? So that might sound familiar to some of you out there. I'm a recovering people pleaser myself. And people pleasers are so good at pleasing others. They've learned it, over years and years of practice, that sometimes we can even convince ourselves that we are a yes to something that we're in fact a no to. So that's why one of the really important points was about taking time to check in with yourself. And another thing that I want to bring to light is that, let's say I'm a people pleaser. I say yes, thinking I'm a yes to something. Then I get in the middle of it and my skin starts to crawl right away. I get that feeling, right? So the other thing that's super important with consent is the ability to change our minds. I even recommend that if I'm a maybe to something and then I realize I'm a yes, I'm going to give this a go, to say out loud, I feel like I'm a yes to that, and I reserve the right to change my mind. So let's give it a try, and I'll let you know how it's going on my end. Yeah, so what can come about if you practice these things, and we're going to have a chance to get deeper into these topics with our next couple of speakers, is that there can be a really beautiful place where I can realize I'm a yes in service to your request, and then I get the joy of giving, which is for you and it's also for me. So just a few things to think about as we start to delve into this juicy topic tonight.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
So I'm really hearing this, this dropping into the body.
Yeah.
Getting that felt sense, that sense of joy or that ick.
Yeah.
And making sure, if it is that maybe, that taking that pause to be aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe even using your voice to let people know, I'm going to go forward, but I might step back.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Ultimately, consent for me is about trusting myself. Because if I can trust my yeses and nos, then no matter what happens, I know that I will keep myself safe. And that's a process that I've had to go through. It wasn't just like I was just, I probably was born being able to be clear on my yeses and nos all the time, but through my life experiences, I became unclear at times. And so I had to come all the way back to being able to fully trust myself. And so if you're a person out there and you're afraid to take risks because sometimes you've gotten yourself into bad situations in the past, then these are a few tips to help you kind of step back and slow down to be able to check in with yourself, because you are ultimately the source of your own safety.
Thank you. Yeah, Michael, Didi, how is this resonating with you? Do you have something to add or expand on?
You go. You go.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm like, yes, 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 because body, body, body. I'm hearing like all these things like tune into your body. And so yeah, I'm totally resonating with that. And the aspect of really trusting oneself, I think, is so important.
Mm. Yeah. Michael?
Yeah. I was really struck by one of the parts where you were talking about the joy of giving, the joy that one can experience in that place of giving, of being in service. And what that reminded me of was very much that we have a responsibility to look after ourselves in any position, whether we're getting something that we want or, whether we're being of service to somebody else. And so being able to find ways to take responsibility for ourselves enables us to end up in that place of joy, because we can really go with it and as somebody just said, feel safe and trust ourselves. And the other piece that landed with me, or that I was reminded of when you were talking about the maybe, and you were talking about the cuddle party thing with the maybe means a no. And I would add a little sort of add-on to that, which is that often a no, a maybe can be a no waiting to be heard, but it could also be that you need more information. So often when I feel a maybe, I start asking questions. I start kind of asking questions of myself and also the other person that I'm in an interaction with to get more clarity on actually, yeah, can I get to a point where I'm super clear?
Mm. Nice. Yeah. I want to speak to that maybe a little bit as well. That really resonates with me. I find that there's a couple of levels to maybe for me. Often I need more information, but I need information on a couple levels. Maybe more detail about what really we're talking about here and what I'm agreeing to. But also there's a level of kind of sussing out the energy from the person that I'm asking from for information. If there's an opening, if there's a space created for me to land and get the information I need, then often I will soften and open and be more excited to participate. Then if there feels like a contracting and a hurry up with this, or not, the answering is not available for me, then that right there is also an answer in another way to me, that's not a space that I'm going to feel safe in. And I will often close down further, or it will go to a no. So maybes to me can go yes or no very easily, depending on what is happening between us often. Hmm. I see your eyes up, Dee Dee. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking like, how much do we want to go into this, and should I insert a comment here?
Please.
So, okay. I also think this is contextual, right? Like it often has to do with the gravity of what we're discussing. So if I'm in front of, Michael and we're negotiating, how we're going to cuddle or whatever, versus if I am in front of am I going to quit my job or I feel like there's bigger situations that sometimes merit spaciousness, like stepping away even to get deeper into your own reaction. So, for example, if I'm feeling constricted, I, like Michael said, get really curious, like what's going on. And I love to notice, where in my body is this showing up? Where is that constriction showing up? Because I know my body well now. And when pain shows up in my right shoulder, I need to pay attention to that. There's another message that needs to come forward. And so a lot of times it's just a protective little child, but I need to allow that child to be heard before I can open up into the spaciousness of even taking in more information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that point, the contextual.
The context. Yeah, the consent of what I'm consenting to. Yeah, it can have different weight, I guess is another way of saying that. Yeah.
And don't you think there might be situations in which it's not really that appropriate for a maybe to become a yes, like those cuddle parties? Does it feel like there are places where we may, if it's not a full yes here, then it has to go to a no? What do you think I'm asking?
Me or Maria?
Everyone.
Everyone. Oh.
Yeah.
I do, absolutely. I think it for me has to do with how high the stakes are.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Yeah, because what is the risk that I'm taking by saying, okay, I'll give it a try if it's a maybe.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something small, like, do you want to hold hands? It's a pretty small risk. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to have intercourse? That's a lot bigger. I don't think I'd want to do that as a maybe. I know I wouldn't want to do that as a maybe, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think context is very important when it comes to the maybes.
Mm-hmm.
And usually in cuddle parties, we're talking with a lot of people who are more on the beginner side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a really good, safe rule to have a maybe mean a no, for example.
How does this land with you, Michael? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about the safety aspect of it. I think when we're talking about context, and when I'm thinking about the nervous system, we play when we feel safe, we explore, we experiment when we feel safe. So if we're not feeling safe, it's not even just about the stakes, it's about the levels of safety that I feel in my context. So if I'm at home and my partner comes up and gives me a hug, I'm going to feel quite safe. If I'm on a crowded bus and a complete stranger does the same thing, my nervous system is going to have a very different reaction. So in those two contexts, I might then have a very different response in terms of where I go with that next and how much I explore that.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah, context again, huge. And even back to Maria, I would say, holding hands compared to intercourse sounds pretty obvious, but that's also contextual for each individual person. For one person, intercourse may be way easier than the intimacy of holding hands.
Good point. Yeah.
But really, it's about knowing and trusting our own selves and what our body's telling us, to me, rather than what my mind might be saying, this should be okay here, even if my body's saying, actually, that's not feeling so okay.
Yeah.
And for me, that brings me back to the pause, the power of the pause. I've worked with so many people with pausing as a central part, and just seen in so many different ways how that enables them to connect with what's there for them, what's true for them, what's happening with them, to then be able to make the more authentic choice.
Power of one deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
One deep breath.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah. I want to ask about this people pleaser that you brought up. We have a few moments to roundtable a little bit more around your subject. Is that okay to go into the people pleaser a little bit?
Sure, absolutely.
So how do you know if you've been a people pleaser? I don't tend to be a people pleaser in general. So if you're a people pleaser and you've been working, how do you know? How do you feel the difference for yourself? What do you all think? Or tips to get there, to be able to learn to trust your own self?
I would say first thing that comes to mind is about, do you resonate with having found yourself doing things, sexual or otherwise, that you realize, oh, I don't really want to be doing this thing when it involves other people. That would be one big cue that maybe you're a people pleaser.
Or like after, even I would take that even one step further. Sometimes we'll say yes, and then afterwards go, what the hell did I just do? Wait a second. Shit.
Yeah, having regrets after something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in my piece, but for me, it's something around getting clear about who it's for. You know, if I'm doing something and it doesn't feel good, like who is this actually for? Like who's getting something out of this?
Yeah. Because I would want to even point out, for some people, people pleasing is pleasing. You know, for some people, people pleasing is pleasing. So maybe it's, to me, always going back to that self-awareness and doing the practices to make sure that we're really tapped into our own bodies and what is authentically juicy and exciting for us, what's authentically pleasing to us.
And I also feel like there is, I think we touched a little bit upon this the other day, where like, I know there was a point in time in my life when I was a people pleaser, and I just thought it was great, you know, because people were happy. Like, I love to make people happy. And yes, so I get what you're saying to a certain degree of like, it makes me happy that I'm people pleasing. But underneath, when I really was able to understand the whole people pleasing, I realized underneath was a really poor concept of myself, of value, of self-worth, that I was really afraid that they weren't going to like me. So I felt that I needed to just go overboard and make them really super happy, because then they would always like me. And so I think the more we practice and really, I don't know, connect in with that self-worth and know that we get to absolutely have what we want to have, I think that that's really important in understanding, and even sort of, I don't know, I guess maybe dismantling the whole people pleasing behavior.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dee Dee. I recognized that about myself as well. It was like, oh, I want to make sure you're still going to like me, you're still going to love me, you're not going to leave me, all of that stuff. And then when I was able to realize, like, oh, okay, I get to make my own choices and have my authentic yeses and nos regardless. And I know that I'm worthy and lovable, whether you're happy about my choices or not.
Exactly.
And that's safety.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's worth saying as well that people pleasing can be a place that can feel like a place of safety. You know, if we've adapted a means of behavior to keep ourselves safe, to survive, that can feel like a safe place to be. So yeah, it's worth remembering that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Which allows maybe a sense of judgment around it to come off in some ways. I mean, primally, being part of community, accepted in community, is one of our survival instincts. So people pleasing can be a survival instinct in a lot of ways for people, you know. I would wonder again about this tapping in, the subject of empowered or expanded yeses and nos compared to contracted yeses and nos. And it would seem to me that an agreement through people pleasing because of desiring to not be rejected or to be enough, or because you feel those underlying insecurities that you two were talking about, that energy in that yes would still be tinged, that it wouldn't be a fully empowered, expanded yes, because it's going to be tinged by that underlying fear of rejection or whatever insecurity you're trying to make up for. And therefore would still, if you're really tapped into your personal awareness, would still feel more contracted. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that unsurprisingly, someone who's functioning as a people pleaser is all, mostly all outward, right? Looking out there, is everybody happy? Is mom going to yell if I do this thing or say I don't like that? Coming back to the safety aspect that you pointed out, Michael, So that's been sort of the survival mechanism, if you will, of the people pleaser. And absolutely, you know, if that same person learns to come back to themselves, they would know that, that's a contracted yes.
Mm. Mm. Dee Dee?
I love that. And I also would just add, like, I think about me like 10 years ago.
Right.
And like, I was the marathon runner who pushed herself, you know, to do the marathon to see if physically she could do it. In other words, I really didn't listen to my body.
Mm.
So I think that there's also like different levels of where we're coming to listening to our body and feeling that contraction. If you would have told me to feel into my body, I would have been like, yeah, okay, my muscle is sore. You know, I have now a way more nuanced sense of my body and feeling where she's talking to me now than I did then. And so I think we all maybe just start somewhere, right? Like even just getting in touch to see, does that feel constricted? Like I know a lot of people who are like, who would be like, I don't know, do I feel it? Do I really feel it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
there's different levels of where we're at, even just in relationship with our body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reminded of something that I use quite often. I think Betty Martin talks about either the sort of the difference between the push away from something or the pull towards something. So feeling that in your body, do I feel a push away from something or a pull towards something?
Mm.
Totally. I love that you said that. I love it. I love it. For me, I got to dance that way. I've always loved to dance, but there was one point in my journey of dancing where I was like, how does my body want to move? Not how do I want to move my body and shake my booty, but it was like, how does my body want to move? And that subtle distinction of this is the forward movement coming. This is the answer. Is really, I'm so grateful that you brought that forward, Michael. Spot on.
Mm.
Pull or
Right.
push. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And hence why we do this, right? Why we're bringing these conversations forward, because even those of us, I'll speak for me, even myself who does a lot of work around being aware of my body, very passionate and committed to that constant exploration and growth and deepening of that journey with my body and the integration. And yet I'm always learning new things around how to deepen that and new awarenesses to come into. And so those that aren't on this journey, but that are inspired to start learning more about how to have empowered consent, we're giving them tools, even in small awarenesses, you know? And I think that that's really powerful because we start where we are. Mm-hmm. And there's always that journey between where we are and where we want to be, each little step to get there.